Somewhere in your neighborhood, there is a clematis vine swallowing an entire fence in purple, and the person who owns it has no idea what they're doing. They don't deadhead, they don't fuss, they forget to water it for weeks at a time, and yet it comes back bigger and louder every single summer. Meanwhile, maybe you've bought a clematis, planted it with love, watched it limp through one sad season, and then watched it quietly disappear. No big death scene, it just gave up. Here's the truth nobody tells you when you buy that gorgeous plant at the garden center. Clematis isn't fragile, it's misunderstood. Almost everything that kills clematis comes down to 5 very specific mistakes. And once you stop making them, this plant becomes nearly impossible to kill. I'm talking about a vine that survives neglect, droughts, hard winters, and the occasional accidental lawn mower incident. So, in the next few minutes, I'm going to give you the 5 secrets that turn a delicate diva into a tank. These aren't the recycled tips you've heard 100 times. By the end, you'll understand this plant better than most people who've grown it for 20 years. Stick around for secret number 4 especially, because it's the one that single-handedly explains why most clematis die in their first 2 years, and almost nobody talks about it. Let's get into it. Plant it deeper than feels right. Let me start with the secret that breaks every gardening rule you've ever learned. With almost any plant you buy, the instructions are the same. Dig a hole. Set the plant in at the exact same depth it was in the pot. Backfill. Done. Bury a tomato too deep, and you risk rotting the stem. Bury most perennials too deep, and you smother the crown. Clematis does not play by these rules. With clematis, you want to bury it deeper than feels comfortable. I'm talking about taking the plant out of its nursery pot and planting it so that the first set of leaf nodes, those little joints on the stem, end up 2 to 3 inches below the soil line. You're essentially burying part of the stem on purpose. Why does this work? Because clematis has a hidden survival mechanism most gardeners never trigger. Those buried nodes can sprout brand new shoots underground. So, if the top of your plant ever gets damaged, frost zaps it, a slug army eats it, you accidentally snap it while weeding, the plant doesn't die. It just sends up fresh growth from below the soil. You've basically built a backup plant underground. This deep planting is also your #1 defense against clematis wilt, the mysterious disease where a healthy-looking vine suddenly collapses overnight. We'll talk more about wilt later, but here's the preview. A deeply planted clematis can be cut all the way to the ground and still regenerate from those protected buried buds. A shallow one has no second chance. So, when you plant, ignore the instinct that says, match the pot level. Go 2 to 3 inches deeper. Feel uncomfortable. That discomfort is exactly the point. Cold feet, warm face. You've probably heard the old saying about clematis. It likes its head in the sun and its feet in the shade. It's repeated so often that it's become background noise, and most people nod along without actually doing anything about it. That's a mistake, because this little phrase is hiding one of the most important things about keeping clematis alive long-term. Here's what it actually means in practice. The top of the plant, the vines, the leaves, the flowers, wants full sun, 6 hours minimum. That's where the energy comes from. That's where the blooms come from. No argument there. But the root zone is the opposite story. Clematis roots hate being hot and dry. When the sun bakes the soil at the base of the plant, the roots stress, the moisture vanishes, and the vine starts sacrificing its own leaves and flowers just to survive. This is why a clematis in a hot, exposed spot can look so leggy and pathetic even when it's getting plenty of light. The fix is to keep the base of the plant cool and shaded. The lazy, expensive way is to buy decorative stones or shade tiles. But the way that actually works best is to plant something low and leafy right in front of your clematis. A small shrub, some hardy geraniums, a clump of perennials, even a sprawling annual. Those plants cast a living shadow over the root zone, hold moisture in the soil, and keep the temperature down. This is the part that makes clematis forgiving. Once the roots are protected and cool, the plant can go far longer between waterings without panicking. You're building a buffer. You're making it so that when you forget about this plant for 2 weeks in July, and you will, the roots are sitting in cool, moist soil instead of cooking in the sun. Cold feet, warm face. Burn that into your memory. Know your pruning group, or stop cutting entirely. Now, we get to the secret that creates more confused, flowerless clematis than anything else on this list. Pruning clematis terrifies people. And honestly, the reason it's confusing is because there isn't one rule. There are 3, depending on which type you own. Cut at the wrong time, and you'll snip off every flower bud before it ever opens. The plant won't die, but you'll get a season of nothing but leaves, and you'll swear the plant is broken when really you broke it. Here's the simple version that cuts through all the jargon. Clematis fall into 3 pruning groups. Group 1 blooms early in spring on growth from the previous year. These you barely touch. If you cut them hard in late winter, you're cutting off this year's flowers. With these, the rule is only tidy up lightly right after they finish blooming, and otherwise leave them alone. Group 2 are the big showy early summer bloomers, and they're the divas. They flower on old wood, and again on new wood. With these, you do a light trim in early spring, just removing dead or weak stems, and you'll get blooms twice. Group 3 blooms later in summer on brand new growth, and these are the easiest of all. Every late winter or early spring, you chop the entire plant down to about a foot off the ground. Brutal, fast, no thinking required. It comes roaring back. So, how do you handle this without a botany degree? 2 options. Option 1, figure out which group you have, check the tag or note when it blooms because bloom timing tells you almost everything. Option 2, and this is your safety net. If you have absolutely no idea which group you own, do nothing for the first full year. Just watch it. See when it flowers. A clematis that's never pruned won't die. It'll just get a little messy. But a clematis pruned at the wrong moment loses its entire show. When in doubt, put the shears down. The wilt trick that saves almost every plant. This is the one I told you to wait for. This is the secret that explains why so many clematis vanish in their first 2 years. And it's the moment that separates people who give up on this plant from people who grow it for decades. Picture this. Your clematis is thriving. It's climbing. It's healthy. Maybe it's about to bloom. You go out one morning, and an entire stem or the whole plant has collapsed, wilted, blackened, dramatic, dead-looking overnight. No warning. That's clematis wilt, and it is the single most heartbreaking thing this plant does. It's a fungal issue that hits the stems, and it looks exactly like the plant has died. So, here's what almost everyone does. They assume it's gone, they dig it up, they throw it away, and they tell everyone clematis is impossible. Here's the secret. That plant is almost certainly not dead. Clematis wilt attacks the visible top of the plant, but it rarely kills the root system. And if you took secret number 1 seriously and planted deep, you've got living buds sitting safely below the soil, completely untouched by the wilt. So, instead of giving up, you do something that feels insane. You cut the entire collapsed plant right down to ground level, remove all the wilted material, get it away from the plant, and don't compost it. Then, you keep the soil consistently moist, you keep those roots cool, and you wait. In the vast majority of cases, within a few weeks, you'll see new green shoots pushing up from the base, fresh, clean growth from those protected underground buds. The plant resets itself completely. Many clematis go through wilt once or twice in their early years, and then, as the root system matures and gets stronger, simply stop doing it altogether. So, the real secret isn't preventing wilt. It's refusing to panic when it happens. The gardener who throws the plant away loses. The gardener who cuts it down and waits gets a vine that lives for 20, 30, even 40 years. Knowing this one thing is the difference between killing clematis and being someone who can't kill it. Feed the roots, not the calendar. The last secret is about long-term staying power. The difference between a clematis that survives and a clematis that becomes that monster vine swallowing the fence. Most people either never feed their clematis at all, or they grab whatever generic plant food is in the shed and toss it on randomly whenever they happen to remember. Both approaches give you a plant that just sort of exists, alive, but never spectacular, and never tough enough to shrug off neglect. Here's what clematis actually wants. It's a heavy feeder with a big appetite, but it wants the right food at the right moments, not a constant drip of nitrogen. Nitrogen pushes leafy green growth, and if you overdo it, you get a wall of foliage and almost no flowers. A healthy-looking plant that refuses to bloom. What clematis really wants for flowers is potassium and phosphorus. So, here's the simple rhythm. In early spring, as the plant wakes up, work a generous handful of compost or well-rotted manure into the soil around the base. That's the slow, steady foundation. Then, as the plant approaches its blooming season, switch to a feed that's higher in potassium. Something like a rose or tomato food works beautifully, and that's what fuels the explosion of flowers. Once it's blooming hard, ease off and let it do its thing. But here's the part that ties this whole video together. A well-fed clematis with a strong root system is a forgiving clematis. The energy it stores in those roots is exactly what lets it survive when you forget to water it, when wilt strikes, when winter hits hard, when you completely ignore it for a month. You're not just feeding it for prettier flowers, you're building a reserve tank that makes the plant nearly indestructible. Feed the roots, and the roots will carry the plant through everything you throw at it. So, let's bring it all together, because these 5 secrets aren't really 5 separate tips. They're one strategy. You plant it deep, so it always has a backup. You keep the feet cool and the head sunny so it stops stressing. You respect the pruning group, or you leave the shears alone entirely. You refuse to panic when wilt strikes, because that plant is coming back. And you feed the roots so it builds the strength to survive anything. Do those 5 things, and you don't just get a clematis that lives, you get one that thrives on neglect. If this guide changed how you think about these incredible vines, please subscribe and like the video. We are dedicated to uncovering the secrets of the garden that others have overlooked. Let's grow a more vibrant future together. Our next deep dive into the wonders of the natural world will be opening up very soon.